This week I bumped into Lerato Mantambo, who at the time of entering was one of 8 black female pilots in the aviation industry. We chat about why she chose such an industry that is particularly dominated by white males.
It was perfectly normal for the other old white guy next to her to be. It made perfect sense to me that this would be the pilot. But for her to have been there in that seat, I couldn't, I couldn't connect the two. And because I couldn't, I was like, oh my gosh, if she can do it, surely, it can be done by me.
We also discuss why it's actually hard to have a gender pay gap in the aviation industry.
It's hard to have a pay gap because because we work on seniority, which is a lot like a military system, which is you are as senior as when you entered the company, and this is most companies, if not all.
And as always, in true Bumped Into style, we go deep.
What have your exes, your ex-boyfriends? I mean, this is obviously before you got married. Misunderstood about you, the one thing.
Oh, did they understand anything at all?
What piece of advice would you give your child? The one piece of advice.
I literally have written a book. I'm not even joking. I bought a diary, and ever so often I write into it, and in there is constantly like pieces of advice for her. So that is a very difficult question for me.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for taking the time, especially knowing that you are sick. I've been wanting to do this for a long time, even when I bumped into you in Cape Town. I've been looking forward to this interview. So first of all, thank you. And
No, absolutely. I'm honored that you thought of me
no, of
as
course.
worthy.
No. You're making me feel worthy. I mean, by honoring me by your presence. So yeah, Lerato, I mean, thank you for joining me on the show. And
Happy to do it. Happy to do this. Yeah.
So let's get straight into it. I mean, for people that don't know you, can you just briefly tell us about yourself? How did you grow up? Usually the ages I focus on is maybe just your formative years, so your primary school years, so 7 years old. But feel free, to go wherever. I just want to understand more of you and how you grew up.
Yeah. So I grew up in Mafikeng, in the Northwest. When I Unit 2 went to primary school in Salt Blakey, and then a bit of high school at Mabato High as well. So very much, so Mafikeng in the units, it's sort of like Lokshini, but not quite, So somewhere in between Lokshini and the burbs, So it was really fun growing up in that environment because it was quite free. So you'd have kids playing in the streets, Laleli Gusha, Kosekeleng. My house was Kosekeleng, which I later learned is actually called the cul-de-sac. And so that was really fun. It was free living, open, safe, but also not it was a bit sheltered, but not dangerous. We weren't scared of any gangsters or anything around the corner. Like Mafeking was super quiet. Nothing really ever happened except the mythical binky at school, or there'd be rumors of like a black car with black tinted windows that would probably go stealing around kids, but nobody ever knew which kids went missing, But that's the stuff that they used to scare us for whatever reason. So I had a pretty cool childhood. My mom is a single mom, and she was a teacher, and she was a teacher secretary. She was a teacher of sports. So she did a lot of coaching, swimming, athletics. She was very, very athletic. And then she was also the school secretary along with a colleague, Uncle Tabo. So I'd come back from primary school and I'd have to do homework behind my mom's desk with Uncle Tabo there. So all the students in the high school would come in with whatever issues they'd have, and I'd be privy to all that information, and it was just, entertaining at
So
most
your
times.
your uncle Tabo, was he almost like the local community psychologist, even though he didn't have the title in a way?
No, not at all. He was actually
Okay.
like the big, burly, funny guy, but you don't really mess with him. Like you can
Uh-huh.
make jokes around, but as soon as you're in trouble, like you're really in trouble, he switches from that clown face to like I will
Very
F you up
serious.
face very quickly.
Wow.
Yeah, but
Okay.
yeah, that was pretty much my upbringing. I was not quite sporty until I got to early high school, and I did some track. I ran some track, did high jump, long jump, and yeah, throughout that time I thought I was going to be a veterinarian. I loved animals. I
Mm-hmm.
used to just imagine myself living on this farm with like horses and giraffes and big swimming pool with dolphins. My imagination just ran away with me. But also because I used to read a lot.
Mm.
I used to absolutely love reading. My favorite book was Anne of the Green Gables, and now I see it's sort of been turned into a series now on Netflix. As I think Anne with an E, something like that.
And
And
just briefly on that, what is that? I mean, I've never heard of that book. So what was that about? And I mean, how did it actually? How can I put it? Um, expand your imagination, because it seems like it really had a strong impact for you growing up.
yeah, I mean, it's really unfortunate. I wish that I had books to read then that reflected or that I could see myself in. So I
Mm,
sort of superimposed myself in this story that was completely different to my reality. But I suppose it was a bit of escapism as well, which was great. But that was the access that those type of good books were the access that I had. So Anne of the Green Gables was about a red-haired girl coming who's an orphan coming from a poor background, and she used to hate her hair because it's so red. Being a ginger, you're being
mm,
laughed at and that sort of thing. And she was a super nerd, and so it was in like Victorian times. And she was a bit of a loner, but also very adventurous. And so it would talk about just her life, how she got adopted into this family, and how she was supposed to do her best, and she was super afraid to disappoint. um yeah, it was, though you're just following her adventures in life. I'd sort of weave my way around bath time to grab a little bit more of Anne of the Green Gables. It was crazy. I'd get a hiding for it, of course.
oh wow. Okay,
But
and
yeah, but you can imagine, like, I was probably what, maybe like 10 at the time. This 10-year-old reading about this ginger girl, um, somewhere in Britain, and that was
mm,
worried about her puff sleeves. I couldn't even imagine what puff sleeves were. So that's where like you really had to have an imagination going. And the
sure.
language was very different to what we would use. So a lot of my English that I would get from reading, I would then use out in the real world, and other kids would be like, "What in the hell are you talking about?" You know. Um,
Mm.
but as much as that was fun, I also would have, looking back in retrospect, I would really have liked to have read about other girls on the continent and superimpose myself onto their lives. But yeah, that was my childhood.
And just on that, I mean, my final question, just around this, which, I mean, you what is the term I'm looking for? You're a new mother, if
Yeah.
that's even the term you use. Congratulations, by the way,
Thank
just for
you.
the listeners to know. And I know it's never been a holiday. I mean, I've always thought when ladies, especially being in corporate, get 6 months off, I'm like, enjoy your holiday. But I know it's actually quite a lot of work, which sometimes as guys we don't appreciate. But just on just on that, my question: how important is reading? I mean, as a new mother as well, how important is reading for your child? And where I'm going with this question is more around what childhood aspects, the way you're brought up, are you going to incorporate and bring up your child? Number one, and I mean, if you're comfortable, are there any things are you going to change in terms of being brought up? If that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand. Like
Mm,
what and I think every parent actually does this, when they
mm,
become parents. Um, you like, okay, my childhood was awesome. The child that I had is the child that I had,
sure.
and I am the person I am today because of
Mm,
it. And I had a wonderful childhood. I had my cousins around the corner that I used to play with, and their parents were amazing support for my mom as a single parent until
mm,
later when my younger sister was born. And I think one of the one of the very first thoughts when I was still pregnant was, what am I going to do differently? I really
sure.
need to be purposeful in the way that I choose to parent my daughter.
Mm,
So the one thing that I really felt was important is that I need my daughter to know Setswana, you know,
mm,
at least be able to converse in the language. And so to be speaking about reading. So I went and I searched for Tswana books,
mm,
kiddies books that I can read to her now. And
mm.
the funny thing is, I found myself struggling to read in Setswana. Like I flow reading English. I'm even learning Spanish now because my husband's Spanish,
Yes.
and I'm a better reader of Spanish that I'm learning now. Granted, I
Thanks,
go
sister.
to twice a week for my lessons, but I'm a better Spanish reader than I was when I started reading Tswana books for my daughter. It's insane.
Wow.
So, so as much as I'm teaching her, I'm actually relearning myself.
As
Because
well.
the last time I did Setswana was probably in grade six, grade
Mm,
seven, which is like what, standard five. And yeah, so definitely, I reading is so important, um,
mm,
to instill that um what is it? Not just a skill, but a habit,
mm,
to make it like a habitual thing. Like she must
sure.
see me read, which is not it's not a difficult thing. I read all the time, but I
Mm,
must read to her as well, and in the language that I want her to understand.
mm,
And her dad also has books in Spanish, also has books in Basque as well. So we've got tons of books that we read to her all the time,
mm.
and this is just so that she has that habit, that she doesn't have to, when she's much older, have to learn, so that it's just ingrained in her.
Wow. That's awesome. I mean, look, we could dive deep into this topic. I mean, it's a conversation I've had with my friends in terms of the cultural shift that's happening and how we're actually growing, how we're raising basically the next generation. But that's probably a topic for another podcast episode. Now, I'd love to move on to, I mean, the core of this conversation, which is more around you being, as Trevor Noah said, a pilot.
Hey.
Hey. um, so where did the fascination of flying come from? I mean, because and I hate this word always gets me, a veterinarian, right? Is that how you say it? Sometimes English grips
Yeah,
me.
I'm not a vegetarian.
Yeah, not a vegetarian. But I mean, you said you had a love for animals. So first of all, where did the switch happen, and then where did the fascination of flying come in that has led you obviously up to this journey right now?
Yeah, so I'm still to this day a lover of animals, but um, I realized one day that being a vet, I'm actually going to see animals sick all the time. which is going to break my heart. So as an animal lover, it's actually, and if you're a bit of a softie, it's not the best career decision to make. So as much as you'll be surrounded with animals all the time, they'll be sick,
Sure.
which then I was like, okay, maybe that's not the best idea. And as for flying, I was still in high school, and my aunt took me to, and I'll use interchangeably my aunt and mom because
Sure.
the person that I call mom now is actually my aunt because my biological mother passed away when I was in my
Oh, wow.
teens. So the
Okay.
person that I said was a single mother raising me, she passed away when I was in standard nine.
Sorry to hear that.
And then my aunt took me and my younger sister in and has been raising and continued to raise us as her own. So
Wow.
she took
Big
me
help.
to Mafikeng Airport, and they say
Mm-hmm.
Mafikeng International Airport. I don't
Oh wow!
know.
So I didn't even
I
know
don't,
Mafeking
yeah,
had an airport. Oh wow! Okay.
international even, hey?
Oh wow!
Yeah, I'm not sure. Um, so took me there for an air show that was being hosted by the Air Force.
Hmm.
And part of the air show, they had a Siandiza program um, slash Young Falcons, where they took a couple of kids from different, like various ages, and took them on a flip overhead the town. And you know, piloting this plane was one of the two pilots was this like tall, gorgeous black woman, and I
Hmm.
was just awestruck. And we went on the flight. It was very short, but very meaningful. And that image has literally stayed burnt into my brain since. And literally, I got off the plane and I said to my mom that, listen, I want to do this. If
Wow.
I'm not gonna be able to fly them, I'd love to be able to make them. And that was in what, maybe grade 10.
Hmm.
And from then on, I went and investigated and joined the Falcons program because they didn't come to recruit at my school. I had to go out and find them. So it started through the Air Force, but I never actually went to the Air Force. But the love for that's where it started.
Jeez. And I mean, you're touching on a very important topic, which I love to talk about, is the just exposing people, especially our young generation, to different career paths, has such a massive effect. Which is obviously testament
Absolutely.
to you now being a pilot, and
And
it's fun.
representation.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Which is something
Because
I
I
was
mean,
actually just
it
yeah.
was perfectly normal for the other old white guy next to her to be. It made perfect sense to me that this would be the pilot. But
Mm,
for her to have been there in that seat, I couldn't, I couldn't connect the two. And because I couldn't, I was like, oh my gosh, if she can do it, surely,
you
it can
can.
be done by me.
And just tell me at that time, I mean, I don't know if you have information in terms of the stats, but um, I'm assuming, I mean, I could probably place a lot of money on this, that there were not a lot of black women pilots in South Africa.
Yeah, no,
And
at the time, even less, of course. Yeah,
so and I'm assuming that when you also started, I mean, way back when, you're still you're still the minority even to today, correct?
absolutely. Yeah.
Oh wow. Wow. So
So with
yeah.
with those stats, and the interesting bit is that she was with the Air Force, and we're now currently one of the few black female pilots within the company that I'm in now. And I met her again years later, and she was
Mm.
sitting in my interview panel. And
Oh wow.
obviously now I'm so now obviously you've got like normal nerves of being in an interview because if for a job that you actually want, that you care
Mm.
about. Um, but there was additional nerves because I was just like, you know, um, hero struck as well, you know, like, oh my gosh, she's here. I felt almost like the pressure to impress her
Mm.
over and above just getting the job. But that's really shows also how few how few black female pilots there are, but not just black, just like people, women of color
Mm.
in this environment. I was doing research for my research study for my BCom that I just got recently last year.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I was looking at those stats that the Civil Aviation Authority released from a few years back, and they were looking at so there's different licenses, right? So you have private pilot's license, you have a commercial pilot's license, and you have airline transport pilot's license.
Mm.
So, and then you've got different. So those three licenses, also the same category for helicopter. So there's helicopter, and then there's fixed wing, which is just normal airplane.
Sure.
And I remember looking at 8 black female pilots um, in the whole of South Africa having that last license, the airline transport pilot's license. And that was at the time that I maybe had it for like a few, maybe 3-4 years then.
Are you included in the 8, basically?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
you basically one of 8 black female pilots in South Africa.
Not now. I mean, currently, no. I mean, the statistics have improved, but I'm sure not by a great deal.
Sure.
Um, but however, it was. I would need to confirm that with you, but it was literally 8 out of the
Wow.
whole, but 8 with fixed wing, not helicopter. Helicopter is even less.
Jeez.
And now they might, and this is me being optimistic, might have doubled to maybe 16 out of thousands, right? Of people with airline transport pilot license. Obviously, more as you go down with the licenses, more commercial pilot licenses, more private pilot licenses. But it just
Jeez.
goes to show that it's a steep slope, and it's slowly that we're climbing up.
I think this, I mean, transcends the aviation industry. I mean, it goes into different spheres in terms of corporate as well. It almost goes beyond just not beyond. It actually explains why diversity is important, especially for people that are ignorant, and
Absolutely.
why we need representation is because this is how you actually bring people up. Because you
Yeah.
need to put, I mean, in your example, a black woman in a pilot seat to show someone who's coming up that, look, if I can do it, you can also do it. I mean, black
100%.
person, your dreams are valid. This is what I'm thinking right now.
Mm.
Um, so and just on that, I mean, I don't want to focus too much on the internal politics of obviously the aviation industry, but did you, being a black woman, find that you get treated differently within the industry itself? And number two, obviously not to reveal your exact salary, but do you also find that there's also a pay gap between women and men within that industry?
I'm going to start with the second question. So,
Sure.
it's hard to have a pay gap
Okay.
because because we work on seniority, which is a lot like a military system,
Okay.
which is you are as senior as when you entered the company, and this is most companies, if not all,
Mm.
operating in South Africa. That's the system that they use. So if I entered today and you not also entered today with the same licenses, so with the same qualification. So I have an airline transport pilot's license, you have the same license, and we entered today, our salary is going to be the same. If I have an airline transport pilot's license and you have a commercial pilot's license, then I'm going to earn higher than you, male or female, if we both enter today. However, if you then join next month with an airline transport pilot's license, and I joined today with a commercial pilot's license, then you will still earn more than me because your license or your qualification ranks higher. So going forward, and it's so easy to dispute if it goes detected that there's a discrepancy. This is how the rules are. This is how it works. It's because we're all doing the same job,
which is a fair system, right?
which is a fair system to a certain extent. Yeah.
Okay. What I guess this alludes to my first question in terms of treatment when you mention a certain extent.
No, so to answer your first question, no, okay. In order to the reason I said to a certain extent is because that system, the seniority system, is put into question now in a South Africa that we're looking at transformation. So if you look at transformation, you look at that system. Excuse me. Then you say, okay, so all the people of color, it's recent that they came into this industry, right? So it stands to reason that everybody else that would mostly be white would have higher seniority, so would have then all the benefits and have and every so if the people that came later are then at a disadvantage because of the system. So it's harder to promote somebody of color because they came in last.
Yeah.
But then what is transformation about? So those are things that are currently being debated and that sort of thing in the industry.
Wow.
But talking about pay, that's basically how it works.
Okay.
So it's hard to dispute that gender pay gap thing in the industry. It's hard. I don't think it happens. And then to answer your first question, yeah, of course, there's been so many incidents in the industry where you're treated unfairly, and this is with different companies with different individuals, and that's just because of a mindset.
Sure.
It's not so long ago that the industry was lily white, right? So a lot of the people that have been in their positions, since apartheid days, or just for a very long time, that they have to go through a mind change. So they sort of glitch at certain, if you're maybe a bit assertive in certain instances, there's like what,
Yeah.
um,
It's like messing with the wiring. They're like, wait, I just don't.
yeah,
Okay.
like it took me a while to just accept that you're here, but now, like they'll say what, you know, uh, and but these incidents sometimes are very subtle, sometimes are very blatant, and but they also spread quite sparsely because I mean I've been flying for quite a while. So my first flying job was in 2007,
Wow.
so in 2020. So I'm an otopi now in this industry.
Yeah, you're not a veterinary. What? You're not a vet, but you are a
I'm not
veteran,
a vet, but I'm
right?
a vet.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So the incidents are quite sparse and they're also less frequent from when I initially joined the industry. And you also see cases where when you try to now bring a certain incident to light, that as opposed to an acknowledgement or or what would you say, an acknowledgement of wrongdoing and just, correcting the other person. There's been, well, for me, one case that really shook me, that I actually at one point wanted to leave and
Oh
try
wow.
something else until I was like, you know what, I think everybody complains in every industry of the same thing.
Mm,
Why don't you just stick it out because you actually love this job?
mm,
But
yeah.
one incident, it was years ago, um, and I brought, my issue to management of that particular company at the time, and literally they took someone's word without checking information. I got suspended. After bringing proof that the person was blatantly lying about
Learn.
me,
Sure.
then it was just pushed aside. It was like, oh, okay, no, continue, go back to work. Everything is fine now. And I'm like, no, hold up. Are you saying that, anybody can just come and say whatever and not feel the consequences? And they're like, you know what, just let it go. So, I mean, this would obviously not happen with anybody else. If I, just concocted lies
Mm,
about a colleague, senior or not, and it was proven without a shadow of a doubt that I just, concocted lies,
wow.
then I would sure something would happen, you know, some form of discipline, something. Not so like things like that happen, and they're not happening because it's just a weird day, weird things like that happen. You know, no, it's because I am who I am. It's because I look like who I look like.
Sure.
And then alternatively, there's some really amazing experiences as well and people in the industry as well. But
Mm,
changes happening, changes slow. But I don't want to I don't want somebody that's sitting there like a girl, black girl child that's sitting there thinking, I want to get into this, think that it's rosy and there's
mm.
none of this. It's there
No,
and
present both sides of the story, like the realistic
say
view.
again?
No, I'm saying it's good to present the realistic view. Um,
Absolutely.
all the time.
Absolutely. There's but like it's a disease that's spread everywhere in all industries, and
Mm,
the less transformed the industry is, the more pronounced it is. So
mm,
that's why I'm so happy that you're seeing more people of color coming into the industry, more females coming in, um, and yeah, I mean it's got to change. There's no
yeah.
other way.
This is a segment of the show which I really enjoy, and I think it's actually, yeah, it's the one segment I always look forward to. As discussed at the beginning, look, feel comfortable to answer the questions. If you're uncomfortable with them, we can always pause. It's just to get to know you better. And my angle, usually, maybe angle's the wrong word, but it's just to ask questions that we don't really ask ourselves a lot, but is rich and can give you a lot of answers as well, and a lot of perspective. I don't know if you've ever played the game 36 Questions, but it's it was formed by that. It's basically 36 questions start off flight and then they get deeper and deeper. I've formed my own questions around that. Just basically me wanting to get to know you better, and just
How deep
putting
are we talking?
questions.
Are you talking like ocean deep or like the deep end of a pool?
No, 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 no. I balance. Jeez, ocean, yeah, ocean deep. No, man, it's I go easy. I'd like to think I go easy. So, on that note, look, let me just start with my first question. I'll shoot. What's the one thing that's holding you back right now from reaching your full potential?
Uh, Procrastination.
You and me both. Can you elaborate on that? What are you procrastinating on?
Um, so there's a lot of ideas that I have banging around in my head, of
Mm,
what I would like to do, with my, newly obtained degree. and different, pathways that I've sort of seen that I need to explore more and research a little bit more on. Um, and so what I'm procrastinating is reaching out to actual individuals in the industry that I know will not just be able to give me answers, but will probably push me towards the answers that they think are correct for me. So I think the procrastination, it might have a bit of fear to it. I
I was
suppose
just about to
because
ask that. Yeah.
yeah, I might be procrastinating because I fear that it might be a big change in my life.
Mm,
And having a 9-month-old at the moment, I'm still adjusting to that particular change.
mm.
Um, so I think right now I'm subconsciously probably telling myself that um, you need to do more research, But sometimes the research that you need to do is actually sitting down for, a brunch or a
Mm.
coffee with somebody that can actually give you a lot of the answers.
Sure.
And that's what I'm procrastinating. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. No. You preaching to the choir. Trust. Um,
Good to know
I
I'm not alone, eh?
mean, yeah, no, you're not alone. Trust me, there's a lot of us out there. Um, what have your exes misunderstood about you? One thing.
Say again.
What have your exes, your ex-boyfriends? I mean, this is obviously before you got married. Um, misunderstood about you. The one thing.
Oh, did they understand anything at all? Uh, I think maybe um, a misconception that one or two might have had is that when I was busy doing things that made me happy and busy, you know, taking care of myself, that meant that I didn't care about them. I think there was a few, you know, disagreements that would come about that would be brought about by the fact that I was taking care of myself, or that I did this or that um, for me, which maybe they might have felt takes away from me caring about them or me loving them. So being selfish, maybe, um, they probably equated that to not loving them or being unable to care for them, whereas they were two separate things. So I can concentrate on myself and show myself some self-love and also make time for you. In fact, it's very important for me to show myself some self-love and self-care so that I have enough to pour into caring about you.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Very interesting, actually. Um, second to last question. I'm not gonna guess. In my head, I have an answer, but maybe, yeah. No. In terms of this question, what genre is your life? Would you say, whether it's movie or music, and why?
Oh, I think definitely punk rock.
Okay. Never expected that. Okay. Tell me more about that. Why punk rock?
Um, just because I am a very um, you know, spontaneous person.
Yeah.
So I could, or I mean, now a lot less than before. However, the trend has been, you know, up and go, up and do this. So very much the tempo of a beat, do something now, busy doing that, gonna drop that, gonna do this now, gonna, and splashed with a lot of crazy,
Okay.
but crazy in a good way.
Okay.
Crazy being like crazy in my relationships, friendships, um, just like a lot of spontaneity all around me,
Sure.
which I have loved. And now it's obviously simmered all the way down. All the way down.
Punk rock Lerato, eh? Okay. And as my last question, and I think it's very fitting, especially um, at the life stage you're at right now. I mean, a mother, not even a mother to be, a new mother. I think it would be, yeah. I mean, geez. I think it would be nice to end on this note and on this question. Sorry. I mean, what piece of advice would you give your child? The one piece of advice.
Oh, I have, I literally have written a book. I'm like, I'm not even joking. I am currently, I've got I bought a diary, and ever so often I write into it. And in there is constantly like pieces of advice for her. So that is a very difficult question for me. um, because I've got so many pieces of advice for her. Um,
Okay, maybe the one or two or three that come to your mind. I know, obviously, waiting, they all weighted equally. I'm assuming, but I mean, just one or two or three that you could share.
so the first one definitely is to trust yourself.
Mm.
Know yourself, trust yourself. There's always going to be somebody questioning you. There will always be somebody planting doubt. Um, but if you take time to know yourself and know and be in tune with your trust that intuition, um, that is the first piece of advice. So, and that is in all things in life, in love, in work, in relationships, in in anything. That is the first piece of advice that I would give her, and I have given her in my book that I'm writing her. um, the second piece of advice is be open. Really,
Okay.
just um, learn about different things, learn about different people, be open to answers that you might not have expected. Um, be open to different truths. So you might have something that you were pretty sure that is correct, which is trusting that intuition. But if it turns out that that was not so, be open to what the reality is, so that you're not bogged down by what the reality in your mind was, that you're unable to move past it. So many people get caught up in what they thought was the situation, and they aren't able to face reality, and then they get stuck in that phase of their lives for so long, trapped, because they're not open to what actual reality is, what the actual truth is. Um, this third piece of advice is to travel.
Okay.
um, and that third piece of advice, it helps you with the second piece of advice.
Mm.
It really, it opens up your mind. It it breaks barriers. It frees you. Sometimes when you're in a different place and you're detached from all the things that weigh you down, it sometimes it just needs you to geographically move from where you are to a different space to be able to clear your mind, run things through clearly, maybe just before you make a big decision, or just because you can, but travel, 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 which I mean already she's traveled with us a couple of times at
Start them young,
9 months.
right?
Exactly.
Wow.
And that is really what I would like to keep on enforcing. So those are the three pieces of advice that I would
Oh,
that I
wow.
would give to my daughter.
That is beautiful. And I hope one day she actually gets to hear this. When she obviously understands Tswana, and obviously English, but yes, in closing, Lerato, I mean, I do want to say, look, and I even did send your WhatsApp. I'm very inspired by your story. We chatted in London. I was moved, and hence why I was like, I need to actually just get you on the show. And this is before I even started on the
I'm so
podcast.
glad you followed up on that. Yeah.
Oh yes,
It's like pub talk, you know?
you see, this is me. Yes, addressing my procrastination. Um, and knowing that I don't have much time. Help, pub talk. The beers were flowing, right? So, and yeah, I mean, look, I'm still inspired by your story, and I honestly think we need more people like you to continue to break the status quo, whether it's in society, in the industries you're operating in, and then rebuild it one block at a time. I think that's what actually inspires me about you. And thank you for sharing what you've shared with us today. I know there's so much more to you, which would take another couple of episodes to cover. I'm also envious for your daughter because I mean she's gonna grow up with a great mother like you. So
Oh,
yeah, it's I'm sure. Look, yeah, and yeah. Lastly, I think, not I think I hope and I know you're actually gonna continue to make a dent in the universe. So thank you for sharing your time with me.
thank you, Mloto, for, bringing in to be a part of this. I love what you're doing. And yeah, keep at it. Let's help each other out with this procrastination thing, yeah? Kilo Fomo, much appreciated.
Okay, no, cool, man. Thank you, yeah, for coming on the show. And then what I will do is I will edit. Yeah, there'll be post edits. And look, we're looking probably towards the end of Feb, early March. But then, yeah, we'll be in touch. And then, yeah, let's see what the people say and what they can do with this.
What it do, what it do.